Chapter 25. The dress was silk, sleek, shadowy, and unyieldingly black. It flowed like midnight oil, every stitch meticulously constructed to balance regality with restraint. It wasn't layered like the gowns of the dead queens that inspired it, but it bore the weight of presence, stitched not for comfort, but for statement. At the neck, a pristine white turtleneck collar rose high and stiff, hugging Wednesday's throat like a vow of silence. The stark contrast framed her pale face like an antique portrait. There was no exposed collarbone, no plunging neckline, just that ghostly column of white linen standing guard between Wednesday and the world. It was, in every way, her armor. The long sleeves fell fluidly past her wrists, tapering at the cuffs with delicate black lace. The bodice was fitted with silk-covered stays, hugging her ribs with quiet force. Eden had taken on the challenge of tightening the corset's guard ribbons herself. "I'm not even surprised your underwear are black," Eden muttered, pulling the ties with care. "You didn't come dressed like the dead, you came back from it." "I quite happen to like the design," Wednesday said, unmoving. Her eyes were fixed ahead, gazing into the mirror like it might reflect a prophecy. "What's there to object to?" Eden blinked at her. "You're not protesting. You're not brooding. You're not even flinching while I dig this corset into your ribs. I've survived worse." Eden stepped back, taking in the full ensemble, the floor-length silk, the fitted bodice, the stark white turtleneck, the sweep of the flowing sleeves. "You look like a vampire's widow at a royal execution." "I would attend," Wednesday replied, slipping into her black platform Louis Vuitton pumps. The crimson soles caught the light like a drop of spilled blood. Her hair was braided into a wraparound crown, threaded with fine black ribbon. Her obsidian pendant sat at the center of her neck, a glossy punctuation mark beneath the white collar. Thing lounged nearby on her bed, tapping the blanket to get her attention. He signed slowly, deliberately. "You look like a corpse, dressed by a vampire, buried in silk." Wednesday offered a faint smirk. "That's the nicest thing anyone's said to me all week." Eden turned, smoothing the pale pink satin of her own soft formal gown. "We're going to look like a funeral and a flower shop got into a fight." Tyler was still getting used to the feel of the suit. The white blouse alone felt too clean, too crisp, like something pulled out of a glass case, and meant only for mannequins. The black blazer was made of fine wool, tailored so precisely it made him stand straighter just wearing it. It matched the pants perfectly, no loose threads, no awkward fit, just sharp lines and quiet wealth. He'd had to watch a YouTube video just to figure out how to fasten the cufflinks. He held one between his fingers for a second longer than necessary, examining the silver face etched with black obsidian inlay. His initials were carved into them, TG. He slid them into place, feeling the subtle click. Then came the shoes, polished black leather, pointed and stiff, the kind that didn't belong in any Greendale hallway. He opened the small leather box with hesitant fingers and took out the Rolex Wednesday had given him. Silver, impossibly sleek, and heavy in a way that reminded him of everything it represented. He fastened it with practiced care, like he was trying to convince himself that he belonged in it. When he finally stood in front of the mirror, he barely recognized the reflection. For a moment, he felt like someone else. Someone important. Someone expensive. Now he understood why Wednesday wanted to keep things quiet, especially around her parents. This kind of wealth didn't just whisper, it announced. The kind of luxury that could make anyone feel like a fraud, like they were wearing someone else's life. And yet, they were just giving this to him. No ceremony. No strings. Just here. He almost laughed. He looked like James Bond on a funeral assignment. When he came downstairs, his dad's eyes widened. "Jesus, you look like you stepped out of a movie." "James Bond, maybe?" Tyler smiled nervously, still tugging at his cuff. "That's what I said." His father sobered a little. "Just be careful, son. The Addams family, they don't do anything without a reason. Remember that." Tyler nodded, though he wasn't sure what he was agreeing to. He slipped the Rolex under his sleeve, gave a final glance in the mirror, and walked out the door. The cufflinks caught the morning light. So did the weight of everything that came with them. The crowd in Nevermore's grand foyer buzzed with excitement as the exhibition was about to begin. A hush fell when Wednesday Addams descended the staircase with Eden beside her. Eden wore a simple, formal white and pink dress paired with white-heeled sandals, light and graceful in every step. But it was Wednesday who stole the breath of the room. Her black silk gown moved like liquid shadow. The skirt was long and structured with a modern Gothic silhouette. The sleeves were flowing and full, but it was the high white turtleneck that made everyone stop and stare. True to Wednesday's nature, not a sliver of skin showed between the base of her jaw and her wrists. Around her throat gleamed an obsidian pendant, sharp as a secret. Her hair, twisted into a wraparound braid, gave her an air of morbid elegance, as if she'd been painted into an old portrait and stepped off the canvas to haunt the living. Yoko blinked. Is it just me, or does she look like a nun from a cursed cathedral? Bianca narrowed her eyes, impressed. No, a duchess. One who poisons people at feasts. It's the way that gown moves, Yoko added. Like she's about to walk into a medieval court and pronounce someone guilty. Ajax tilted his head. Why does everything she wears make her look like she has a secret alliance with the moon? Even Xavier, still limping with his arm in a sling from the skiing incident, chuckled under his breath. She looks beautiful, he said, in a terrifying, vampire queen kind of way. Before anyone could comment further, the grand doors opened, and in walked Tyler Galpin. He looked unrecognizable. The black and white suit Wednesday had chosen for him fit like it had been stitched by silent tailors under a blood moon. The blazer and pants were made of fine wool, tailored to his frame. Even the crisp white blouse underneath felt expensive against his skin. He wore obsidian and silver cufflinks engraved with TG and a silver Rolex he had nearly dropped twice while putting it on. His black leather shoes were perfectly shined to a mirror finish. He stepped in, unsure. Everyone else was in semi-formal wear. He felt like James Bond gate-crashing a student mixer. He caught Wednesday's eye and froze. She met his gaze with her usual unreadable stare. But then she said, voice low and dry, "Don't worry. You're not the only one overdressed." Before he could ask what she meant, the rotunda doors swung open again. Lucian Addams strolled in, all cinematic presence and unapologetic flair. He wore a formal black and white suit, his tie loose around his neck. His porcelain gold complexion made him look like a statue carved by chaos. His hair fell artfully tousled, as if wind and rebellion styled it. He didn't walk in, he arrived, like a storm that decided to be charming for the night. Students turned and stared. The teachers froze mid-conversation. Principal Weems, standing at the edge of the hall, clutched the pearls at her throat. She whispered to herself, and the others haven't even arrived yet. The exhibition hadn't even started, and already, the Addamses had stolen the entire evening. As the sun dipped behind the hills, casting long shadows over Nevermore Academy, a procession of black vintage cars began to roll into the school's circular courtyard, one after the other, like a funeral parade with flair. Each engine purred with old money and old magic. Butlers and chauffeurs stepped out in sync, opening polished doors as if choreographed for theater. And from each car emerged an Addams. They came in pairs, with children or alone, dressed to the nines in black and white tie formality, exuding effortless power. Velvet, satin, lace, wool, each texture as rich as their expressions were unreadable. Principal Weems, flanked by the Nevermore board, Miss Thornhill, and the mayor, choked collectively at the overwhelming presence. The Addamses didn't simply attend, they took over. With the kind of grace only old families possess, they ascended the steps as if they were arriving at a royal ball or walking a midnight red carpet. Morticia and Gomez, radiant in their matching Gothic formalwear, greeted Principal Weems with the dignity of seasoned diplomats. Even Pugsley, usually the most feral of the brood, was impeccably dressed and hauntingly polite. Among the crowd, Eden, Yoko, Bianca, Ajax, and Xavier paused when they spotted a particular figure, Wednesday's grandmother. Her skin was still plump and radiant despite her years, her long silver hair coiled like smoke. She walked with regal ease, the kind that came from dancing with ghosts. Other elder Addamses followed, some hunched with age, others striding with canes carved from obsidian and bone. Their eyes glinted with memories and mischief. Around them, unease spread like fog. The Sinclairs, Eden's parents, instinctively took a step back. Vincent Thor, Xavier's father, and Rowan's father exchanged looks, shifting awkwardly. Even the mayor kept his distance, whispering something about air pressure changing in the room. The Nevermore board fell into uneasy silence. They had dressed in safe, colorful semi-formal attire, but now, in comparison to the unified, elegant darkness of the Addams family, they looked like party guests who showed up to the wrong house. One of the board members leaned toward another. Did we misunderstand the dress code? No, the other whispered, paling. They just rewrote it. Principal Weems stood stiffly, lips pressed into a line. Rage bubbled just beneath her poise. She should have known. The moment Wednesday had received a custom black silk gown and sent Tyler a suit that could buy a politician, she should have updated the event's formality. Now, the entire exhibition looked like it had been designed by the Addams family, a perfectly coordinated power play in black and white. She drew a slow breath. All she could do now was pray that no Addams raised their voice, claimed ownership of the evening, or worse, declared this Friday's artifacts as theirs. Principal Weems drew in a long breath, gathering the courage she needed to face what was possibly the most intimidating audience she'd ever addressed. She stepped into the center of the Nevermore Rotunda, her heels echoing against the polished stone floor. In front of her stood the statues of Friday Addams and Tyler Galpin, immortalized in black and bronze, frozen in their final moment, Tyler shielding Friday from the flames. All around her, the crowd circled the space. Students, teachers, the mayor, and the Nevermore board members stood shoulder to shoulder with the entire Addams family, who radiated elegance and eerie reverence in their formal black attire. To the side, Wednesday, her arm linked with Tyler's, stood flanked by Eden, Yoko, Bianca, Ajax, and Xavier, his sling still supporting his healing arm. Lucius Addams, hands in his pockets, leaned with quiet confidence against a nearby pillar. On the other end of the room stood Morticia and Gomez, with Pugsley and Grandmama, their expressions unreadable yet proud. In front of them all was an ornate easel, draped in red silk, hiding the main event. Principal Weems cleared her throat. For 400 years, both outcasts and normies. She gave a quick glance to Mayor Walker and Miss Thornhill, the only normies present, have passed down the stories, some say myths, of Friday Addams. A hush settled over the rotunda. Born in the early 1600s, alongside her twin sister Goody, Friday Addams lived in a world where women were not expected to read, to learn, or to lead. And yet, she did all three. Self-taught, self-driven, and brilliant beyond her years, Friday became one of Jericho's greatest minds, despite the age that tried to erase her. A few students bowed their heads. Others stared at the statue in silent awe. It was she who drafted Jericho's historic terms of surrender, marking the end of the outcast normie war of the 1620s, a document still studied today. But beyond that, during the chaos of war, Friday hid and taught outcast children, developing lesson plans and writing books of knowledge, all in secret. Even the mayor looked shaken, adjusting his tie uncomfortably. The Addams family listened with quiet pride. Morticia gave a faint nod. Gomez's hand gripped her hand tighter. She dreamed of a place where children like her could be safe. A school. A sanctuary. And she made that dream real, with the help of Tyler Galpin, a normie settler who stood beside her in a time of fire and fear. Together, they laid the foundations of Nevermore on this very land. Principal Weems turned and gestured solemnly to the statues. And it was here, in this very rotunda, that both of them died, burned alive in the unfinished structure by Joseph Crackstone. Tyler died shielding Friday. And though their lives ended, their vision endured. A somber silence followed. Even the students who didn't care for history looked deeply moved. For centuries, the only surviving piece of Friday's work was the surrender document. Her other writings? Her teachings? Lost to time. Until now. She paused, and that was when Wednesday raised her hand, her dark eyes daring Weems to say her name aloud. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Principal Weems smiled tightly. Until Miss Addams, in the process of redecorating the library, discovered a hidden chamber. Not some grand vault or secret study, no, just a forgotten broom closet, tucked behind one of the old stone shelves. Cramped, dusty, and practically caved in on itself. People turned to look at Wednesday with renewed curiosity. And inside, sealed in an old wooden crate, wrapped in layers of wax cloth and string, were Friday Addams's original manuscripts, lesson plans, field journals, and architectural drawings. Perfectly preserved. Silent. Waiting to be found. Wednesday's smirk was subtle but victorious as she stood with Tyler, their arms still linked. And so tonight, Weems said, turning back to the easel, we unveil the face behind the myth. Without further ado, I present to you Friday Addams's legacy. With a swift motion, she pulled the red silk cover from the easel. Gasps rippled through the room. It was a charcoal portrait, eerily preserved behind a thin pane of glass. Two girls stood side by side in stark colonial garb, one in black, the other in pale gray. Their long, twin braids hung over their shoulders, their faces nearly identical, calm, unreadable, and almost unnatural in their stillness. One held a worn spellbook tight to her chest, its leather cracked and curling at the edges. The other stood with her hand relaxed at her side, while a disembodied hand hovered near her shoulder, captured mid-motion. Silence. Then, the Addams family spoke, nearly in unison. It's Wednesday. Laughter and disbelief followed. Morticia blinked, stunned. Pugsley tilted his head. Grandmama cackled quietly. Wow, that is sort of creepy, someone whispered. I know, said another. Wednesday's eyes narrowed, but she stepped forward, compelled by the room. The wraparound braid she wore, the tailored black silk gown, everything matched too well. Thankfully, her bangs gave her just enough difference. Just enough separation between past and present. Guests began taking pictures, some whispering to each other in awe, others outright unnerved. She looks like both Friday and Goody. It must be in the Addams bloodline. This is unsettling. Even the mayor found himself backing up slightly. But beneath the chatter and spectacle, the atmosphere had shifted. There was reverence now. A deep, respectful hush. Students and board members alike looked to the portrait not as decoration, but as monument. Even those who once scoffed at the Addams family now stood humbled by what a girl of 16 had accomplished 4 centuries ago, a scholar, a writer, a founder, and a martyr. And now, the legacy had returned embodied in her descendant. Chapter 26. As the applause died down and the crowd filtered into the gallery, Wednesday felt the weight of generations pressing down through painted eyes and parchment ink. Please enjoy the exhibition, Principal Weems announced, forcing a composed smile as the guests dispersed. Almost immediately, Morticia and Gomez made their way toward Wednesday, pride practically glowing from them. Oh, our little tyrant, Gomez said, sweeping her into a hug. I always knew your tyranny had to come from somewhere. The rest of the Addams family began to crowd around her, murmuring in their usual grim and adoring way about how much she resembled the girls in the portrait, eerily so. Goody's eyes, Friday's posture. No doubt she'd haunt the same way. Still alive and already looks embalmed. Magnificent. Principal Weems nearly had a heart attack when Gomez turned to Morticia and said, a bit too loudly, oh, Tish, we simply must hang the portrait in the ballroom. Right above the mantel. That way, the whole family can admire it. Later, mon cher. We still need to see what else we can take home, Morticia replied with a contented smile, looping her arm through Gomez's as they glided off toward the next exhibit. Did I just hear Wednesday's parents say they're going to take the portrait home? Eden asked, eyes wide. They can't do that, can they? Ajax said, equally stunned. On the far side of the rotunda, Wednesday and Tyler stood off to themselves. He looked down at her, adjusting his cufflink nervously. Why did everyone keep referring to you and Goody as twins? He asked. I try to correct them, Wednesday replied coolly, but when the faces match and the surname is the same, logic is against me. That is logical, Tyler admitted with a nod. Just then, a tall girl with porcelain skin, bold red lipstick, and straight, ink-black hair with bangs approached. She wore a figure-hugging black silk mermaid gown with thin, spaghetti straps and an obsidian pendant around her neck, clearly an Addams. Wednesday, aren't you going to introduce me? She asked with a sly smile. Adele, this is Tyler. Tyler, Adele, my cousin. Adele offered Tyler a playful, knowing smile. Thank you for letting Wednesday use your phone to call me, Tyler said sincerely. It was no big deal, Adele replied with a shrug. Did you like the pictures I sent you? What pictures? Wednesday asked, her voice darkening as she turned toward Adele with a death glare. Oh, nothing scandalous, Adele said innocently. Just a few shots from your ski trip and fencing competition. Only those two, I swear. Before Wednesday could deliver her signature glare at full power, Grandmama approached, her gray hair swept back into a neat chignon, a walking cane in one hand and a glint of mischief in her eyes. That suit fits you perfectly, Tyler. How do you like the watch? She asked with a grin. It's too much, really, Tyler said, adjusting the silver Rolex self-consciously. Oh, don't be so modest. That's just chump change, she waved off. Have you met Morticia and Gomez yet? Not yet, Tyler admitted, glancing nervously in their direction. Wednesday, Grandmama said with raised brows, you should introduce your so-called friend before chaos erupts. We'll leave you to that, Adele added, linking arms with Grandmama. We're going to go see the rest of the exhibit. As they strolled away, Tyler looked at Wednesday, confused. What did she mean by before chaos erupts? He asked. You'll see, Wednesday said, already walking ahead. Let's go. While Wednesday and Tyler moved through halls of Nevermore in search of Morticia and Gomez, the rest of the Addams family was eagerly poring over Friday's surviving works. Display cases lined the room, showcasing sketches, personal notes, and preserved parchment from over 4 centuries ago, all carefully framed behind glass and set on ornate easels to prevent contact. A few of Wednesday's more eccentric uncles had gathered around the architectural blueprints, intricate drawings of Nevermore's original layout. They studied the floor plans and elevations with grim fascination, tracing the jagged Gothic lines with reverent fingers against the glass. Each drawing had been positioned exactly where Friday had once envisioned them, their locations chosen based on recovered floor plans and archival references. As they passed, Wednesday's eyes narrowed at the sight of one of her uncles, a tall, thin man in a black cravat and floor-length coat, known affectionately and appropriately as Uncle Morbinius. He was staring intently at a framed parchment on a brass easel. It displayed a charcoal sketch of a robed, hooded figure cradling an open book, its face hidden, its presence foreboding. The label beneath read, The Watcher. Beside him stood the current statue at the entrance of the pentagon-shaped courtyard, a stone likeness of Edgar Allan Poe. The resemblance was faint. Both held open books, but the mood was different. The Watcher was timeless and unsettling. Poe looked merely pensive. Wednesday abruptly stopped and turned to Tyler. Stay here. Then she made her way over to her uncle. He didn't glance away as she approached, hands still folded behind his back. Uncle Morbinius, she said quietly. What do you think happened? Why is the statue different from Friday's drawing? He gave a gravelly hum. That. His pale eyes flicked toward her. The original statue, the one Friday designed, the Watcher, suffered extensive damage sometime in the early 1800s. Fire, I believe. Or a lightning strike. No one knows for sure anymore. He turned back toward the Poe statue. By then, Edgar Allan Poe had become wildly famous. The school board of the time decided to modernize and commemorate him instead. And so the Watcher was removed, and this was put in its place. So they erased her vision, Wednesday said bitterly. Such is the price of history, my dear. It's never written, only rewritten. Tyler wandered over, catching the tail end of the exchange. His eyes swept over the towering stone figure. I still can't believe they finished building all this back in the 1600s, he said, visibly impressed. It wasn't easy, Morbinius replied. The outcasts built it with no help from the normies. All the gargoyle statues you see around the school. He pointed to one on a nearby archway. Those aren't decorations. They're the likenesses of the actual creatures who carved this place from stone. They immortalized themselves in the architecture, Wednesday added. Eden said they were the original outcasts, the foundation of Nevermore. And why do you think that is? Uncle Morbinius asked, tilting his head toward her, voice low and rhetorical. Think, Wednesday. She said nothing but held his gaze. Are you planning to take that drawing home, Uncle? She asked after a pause. He smirked. Tempting. But no. I think it belongs right here, beside the statue. To remind people what was supposed to be here, and what they replaced. Wednesday gave a subtle nod of agreement. I'll see you later then, she said coolly. With that, she turned back to Tyler. Together, they made their way deeper into the exhibition, and closer to whatever parental chaos awaited. To think the walls barely reached the height of a fence back then, Tyler said as he walked beside Wednesday, gazing up at the towering Gothic architecture. And they still managed to rebuild all this after Crackstone burned it down? She nodded, eyes fixed ahead. With no help from the normies nonetheless. Tyler paused to take it all in. How long do you think it took them to build Nevermore back then? Decades, Wednesday answered. Stone structures like this were rare in the 1620s. But Friday, she paused just long enough for him to notice. I knew it needed to last. They likely sourced granite from Bar or Cavendish. Marble for columns if they were ambitious. Primitive tools, brutal weather, and the threat of exile made it slower, but not impossible. Tyler shook his head in disbelief. You unknowingly built Nevermore 100 years early, right? It didn't officially exist until the 1700s. Of course. I knew exactly what I was doing, she replied without flinching. He smirked. Sure you did. They turned a corner and found Morticia, Gomez, and several other Addamses gathered around a framed sketch resting on a decorative easel. It was Friday's original drawing of Nevermore's facade. With its looming towers, circular courtyard, and arched entrance crowned by a weeping raven stained glass window, it was nearly indistinguishable from the present-day school. One might have assumed it was drawn after construction, not centuries before. As Tyler marveled at the precision, Wednesday approached the group. Morticia turned first, followed by Gomez, and then the rest of her eerie entourage. All eyes immediately landed on Tyler, standing a half-step behind Wednesday in a perfectly tailored black and white suit. This is my friend, Tyler, Wednesday said, her tone flat but definitive. Across the room, Eden ducked behind a pillar trying to avoid her parents when she caught the words. Did she just say friend? Eden hissed to Bianca, who had just joined her. Wednesday doesn't say the word friend. Bianca narrowed her eyes and leaned closer. Back at the easel, one of Wednesday's aunts narrowed her gaze. A friend, she repeated skeptically, as if it were a foreign language. I didn't think Wednesday had friends, muttered an uncle. Certainly not ones she'd bother introducing to us, another added. Eden let out a breath. Yup, there it is. Bianca's mouth curled slightly. They know her too well. Oh, darling, Morticia gasped, a hand rising to her chest. Her eyes shimmered as the truth hit her. You mean that kind of friend? Gomez broke into a wide grin. He stepped forward, clapping Tyler on the shoulder. Welcome to the family, my boy. You've got excellent taste. I love the suit. Actually, Grandmama, Tyler started, but he was immediately cut off as the rest of the Addamses swarmed him like vultures at a feast. Fantastic, you've already met her. This should go over splendidly with the rest of the clan. Tell us, Tyler, what are your holiday plans? Bianca glanced toward Eden. I'm sorry, is this real? Are they fawning over him? Eden nodded slowly. It's happening. She brought him to the den. And they didn't kill him. Ajax and Xavier arrived just in time to hear the chaos. What did we miss? Ajax asked, blinking at the scene. Looks like the family likes him, Bianca replied. Xavier's expression soured immediately. Of course they do. From a safe distance, the group watched as Morticia gently adjusted Tyler's collar while an aunt whispered something about crypt decor, and Gomez asked him how he handled black tie funerals. In the center of it all, Wednesday stood motionless, arms crossed, watching the madness unfold with quiet calculation. Not amused exactly, but not displeased either. Eden's eyes stayed on her. They know her too well. Bianca nodded. Every single one of them clocked her emotional intent in under 3 seconds. They didn't even ask if she liked him, Eden said. They knew, Bianca replied. Which means, she's serious, Xavier finished darkly. Back at the easel, Wednesday turned slightly toward Tyler, just enough for him to see a nearly imperceptible smile ghost the corner of her lips. Yoko came over to the group, looking mildly concerned. There's another show starting over by the East Wing, she said. Wednesday's cousin Adele is trying to mediate between Rowan and Xavier's dads. Bianca groaned. Still going on about the spring break thing? They're arguing over who's to blame, Yoko muttered. Rowan literally pushed Xavier off a ski slope with his telekinesis. We saw it. Rowan got expelled, Eden said flatly. Xavier's fine. Moving on. Ajax leaned in to Bianca. So what did we miss over here? Bianca nodded toward the growing crowd near the exhibition wall. Looks like another Addams situation. Indeed, something had shifted in the atmosphere. On the other side of the hall, Miss Thornhill was hurrying toward one of the easels, specifically, the one holding Friday Addams' original handwritten Friday's Child poem. The parchment, over 400 years old, was beautifully preserved behind glass and displayed in an ornate frame, placed carefully on a tall brass easel. Only it wasn't on the easel anymore. A man in all black, tall and thin, with white-streaked hair and gloves, was casually tucking it under one arm like he was leaving a bookstore. Miss Thornhill tried to keep her voice even as she stepped up. Mr. Addams, kindly put the artifact back on the easel. The man didn't even flinch. No, he said coolly. I'm taking it home. I've got the perfect spot for it in my library. For a second, there was only silence. Then, everyone turned. Heads swiveled. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. Students, teachers, parents, even Eden, Bianca, and Ajax, who had seen weird things, froze and turned toward the voice. Wednesday's uncle stood there like a Gothic statue, completely unbothered, as if what he said was perfectly reasonable. Chapter 27. By the time Principal Weems swept into the hall, several teachers were already gathered around the ornate easel, their voices raised in firm but cautious tones. You can't just take that, Miss Thornhill said again, more forcefully this time, placing herself squarely in front of the man. It doesn't belong to you. The tall, pale man in the pitch-black three-piece suit let out a dry, amused laugh. His silver rings glinted as he casually adjusted the frame tucked under his arm. You mean to tell me you have a right to it? He said, narrowing his eyes. You, Jericho, have no claim over Friday's work. Every line she wrote, every stroke she sketched belongs to us. The last word hit like a gavel. Us? Miss Thornhill echoed, brow furrowed. The Addams family, he said simply. That drew a wave of murmurs from the growing crowd. Even Rowan and Xavier's fathers, mid-feud and red-faced just moments earlier, went quiet, watching with furrowed brows. Students began drifting closer. Bianca nudged Eden with a sharp elbow. This is escalating. I told you, Eden said. The Addams are like a live show. You never know what act you're walking in on. Ajax whistled low under his breath. Is he serious? Oh, he's very serious, Yoko muttered, eyes narrowing. The other teachers, Mr. Henderson from English Studies and Ms. Jaffe from Paranormal Ethics, stood beside Miss Thornhill, backing her up. It's part of the exhibition, Ms. Jaffe said calmly. This isn't just family history. It's cultural history. The man's sharp gaze turned on her. Cultural theft, you mean? And you are? Principal Weems asked, stepping forward. The man gave a slow, elegant bow. I am Wednesday Addams, he said. Great-uncle to Wednesday, first cousin of Grandmama and rightful steward of Friday Addams' writings. Mortivex. Ajax muttered. That sounds like a spell, not a name. Fitting, Eden replied. As the teachers closed in, Mortivex didn't flinch. Instead, he reached into the folds of his coat and pulled something from behind his knee, an antique black cane with a silver crow's head. He slammed it into the marble floor once. The sound cracked through the air like a gunshot. Tension rippled. Adele, watching from nearby, immediately stepped forward to intercept, but even she hesitated at the expression on Mortivex's face. From across the room, Wednesday and Tyler had arrived, standing beside Morticia and Gomez with the rest of the Addams family. None of them intervened. Not yet. They watched. So did the rest of Nevermore. Even Principal Weems, usually unshakable, looked uncertain. Wednesday tilted her head toward Tyler. The argument swelled like a tide. Miss Thornhill stood stiffly beside the easel, arms slightly outstretched, as if she could shield the artifact from the man still gripping the frame. You can't just take it, she said, voice tight. It doesn't belong to you. The Addams uncle gave a low, rumbling laugh. No, Miss Thornhill. That's where you're wrong. It doesn't belong to you. Or the school. Or Jericho. Never did. It belongs to us. That got people's attention. The crowd's murmurs died into a curious hush. Xavier and Rowan's fathers stopped mid-glare, their argument forgotten as the heat of the moment shifted elsewhere. Teachers exchanged uncertain glances. Students leaned in. A quiet spread. He wasn't backing down. Adele stepped forward. She had been standing quietly on the exhibition's edge, half in shadow, half in spotlight. Adele Addams. Her hair was worn down, loose and impossibly straight, like a sheet of ink. She wore a fitted mermaid gown made of smooth, black silk that hugged every movement with a kind of liquid grace. The thin spaghetti straps rested elegantly on her shoulders, and with every click of her Louis Vuitton pumps, the red soles flashed like blood under moonlight. Undeniably Addams. I believe I can clarify this, Adele said, stepping calmly into the center of the commotion. Her voice was low, composed, and utterly unshaken. I'm Adele Addams, she continued, looking directly at Principal Weems, then slowly sweeping her gaze toward the rest of the room. I'm an attorney based in Washington, D.C., and tonight, I'm also here as both legal representative and family. Principal Weems paled slightly. Her lips pressed together. The very thing she had feared, the legal challenge, was no longer a distant threat. It had arrived, in heels and silk. I'm sure there's been no ill intent, Adele said smoothly, turning slightly to the teachers. But it's important everyone here understands the law. She gestured gently toward the framed parchment in her uncle's hands. This artifact, the original manuscript of Friday's Child, as well as the rest of Friday's artifacts here, were found in a concealed crate in the library archives. My cousin, Wednesday Addams, uncovered it with the assistance of several Nevermore students. That's true, Eden confirmed quickly, stepping forward beside Ajax, Bianca, Yoko, and Xavier. She pulled it out from a hidden compartment, Ajax added. In the library. There is no documentation, Adele continued, indicating that Friday Addams or Goody Addams ever donated these manuscripts, formally or informally, to Nevermore Academy or to the town of Jericho. There's no certificate of transfer. No signature of release. No recorded bequest. And given the fact that both Addams women vanished over 4 centuries ago, the assumption of ownership by the school or the town has no legal basis. Parents and students alike looked at each other, some murmuring in confusion. But how can that be? Someone asked from the back. Adele's tone remained gentle but decisive. If a document or artifact has no chain of custody, no will, no signed transfer, and no donation form, then possession does not equal ownership. Especially not when a direct blood descendant has recovered it herself. Her eyes met Weems's. And Wednesday Addams is not just a descendant, she's the one who found it. Which, under property recovery law, also matters. The teachers fell into an uneasy silence. "She's right," said a soft voice from the side. Xavier's father, arms still crossed, watching with unexpected curiosity. "Legally, the town has nothing. Neither does the school. And neither do you," added Rowan's father dryly to Thornhill. Even some of the parents in the room, clearly unsure what to make of this strange but elegant woman, were nodding slowly in realization. Adele wasn't just speaking with emotion, she was speaking with authority. Near the back, Bianca muttered to Yoko, "She's scary good." Yoko nodded in agreement. Wednesday stood silently beside Tyler, watching it all unfold like a courtroom drama staged at an art gallery. Tyler leaned closer and whispered, "You've got a lawyer in the family?" "Yeah, she's kind of an unconventional member," Wednesday replied. And at the center of it all, Adele turned back to the teachers, to the easel, and to the parchment once known only as a strange myth, Friday's Child. "There's only one rightful place for this manuscript," she said. "And that's with the Addams family." The moment Adele stepped back, the room expected silence. Instead, Wednesday spoke. "I don't mind letting the public see Friday's work," she said, her voice low but clear. "I think it would be better than making it an ornate decoration in some drawing room of ours, or worse, tucked away in one of our vaults, attics, or basements." Her uncle's eyes narrowed. "That's a gross misrepresentation, Wednesday." She tilted her head, unimpressed. "Is it?" He raised a long finger. "We only put family artifacts in storage when we don't have space in the main halls. And even then, we organize them by era and necromantic relevance." "Exactly," came another voice, her cousin Calpurnia, descending from the far side of the exhibit. "Everything goes on rotation. Aesthetic must be freshened. Rooms must be balanced. You don't just dump an artifact and let it rot like Jericho's town museum." "And where's that so-called glorified matchstick you all spent 10 years litigating over in Cairo?" Wednesday asked, crossing her arms. "Then spent another 5 fighting each other for who got to keep it?" "It was a torch," one of her granduncles growled, pale eyes flashing. "A 2,300-year-old torch. The one we used to burn down the Library of Alexandria." The crowd gasped. Tyler blinked. "Wait, they burned it down?" Bianca muttered, "That actually explains a lot." Ajax whispered, "That thing belongs in a museum." Yoko smirked. "I think they are a museum." "A driftwood with ambition," Wednesday said flatly. "You didn't say that about the cursed tarot deck or the voodoo doll," her uncle snapped. "That came straight out of New Orleans." "That was used by Aunt Malphas and Uncle Severine," Wednesday countered, naming 2 of the most terrifying-sounding relatives imaginable. "Which is still more meaningful than a soot-covered stick with a legacy of arson." "It's a torch," Cousin Calpurnia and her brother echoed in unison. "You still haven't answered my question," Wednesday said, calmly slicing through the theatrics. "Where is it? Who has it?" A long pause. Then, finally, one of the cousins spoke. "It's with Uncle Hellebore and Aunt Morturia." Several other relatives nodded vigorously. "Oh, yes, they placed it very prominently on the mantel, just above the grand fire in their living room." The audience let out a few awkward laughs. At first. Then came the realization that they were not joking. "And when you get Friday's manuscripts," Wednesday asked coolly, "are you going to fight over that too?" "Of course," several Addamses said in perfect unison. "You'll understand when you're older," one of her grandaunts added, patting her hand with an expression halfway between warmth and menace. Tyler blinked again. They really are going to fight over it. Family tradition, Wednesday replied under her breath. Around them, the room was frozen in a mixture of awe, horror, and deep curiosity. The Addamses weren't just old money. They were ancient money, obsessed with their dead, bound by blood, and so eccentric it crossed over into operatic absurdity. What the crowd took away. 1. The Addams family were filthy rich. 2. They were religiously devoted to their family legacy. 3. They would absolutely take this to court, and likely win. Do you always argue like this? Someone whispered to Adele. She sipped her champagne. Only during funerals. And inheritance disputes. Tyler leaned closer to Wednesday. Remind me not to touch anything in your house. I already assumed you'd know better. The only thing that hardly gets touched in our houses, Wednesday said to Tyler without breaking eye contact with her feuding relatives, are the portraits of our ancestors hanging on the walls. Untouched, but never ignored. Before Tyler could respond, Morticia gracefully stepped in like smoke rising from an extinguished candle. Now, she said, placing a delicate hand on her brother's arm. Let everyone enjoy Friday's work for now, darling. They still haven't even seen the full extent of her brilliance. The Uncle Mortivex, gave a disgruntled snort but reluctantly handed the framed poem back to Miss Thornhill. The other teachers, sensing the tension deflating, quickly strolled off as if none of it had happened, pretending to admire the display cases as they whispered amongst themselves. Oh, Tish, Gomez said, hands clasped behind his back, already beaming again. But I would still like to see that portrait hanging prominently in our ballroom. And Friday's child poem should go in the library, Morticia added. It's only fitting. After all, Wednesday was named after one of its lines. One of the cousins scoffed. Why do you even need their portrait? Just have Wednesday pose for one. Copy the original. At least then it'll be in morbid color, an aunt quipped. Another cousin chimed in, and why should you two get to keep it? Grandmama cleared her throat like thunder. Have you seen Wednesday's face on both Goody and Friday? Of course Gomez and Morticia should have it, she said with unshakable conviction, as though it had been written into Adam's law. That doesn't mean they automatically get to keep it, a grumbly great-uncle grunted. That goes for the poem too. I call dibs. I've already envisioned it sitting prominently in my library. Uncle Mortivex, someone muttered. But the damage was done. Uncle Mortivex's comment sent a ripple effect through the Addams family, like a cursed bell tolling the start of some undead auction. Suddenly, I want the architectural blueprints of Nevermore. No, I want her botany journals. I'll take her lesson plans. I saw the drawing of the herbology lab first. Not if I get the concept sketch of the greenhouse exterior. Voices layered and tangled. From Aunt Sanguina's heated demand for the botanical illustrations to Cousin Ludovico insisting that he should get the Nevermore floor plans to use in his latest crypt renovation project. It was chaos. It was family. The guests' parents, school board members, the outcast dignitaries, and even the mayor just stared, frozen in place as the Addams family openly battled over the legacy of their long-dead relative. Eden slowly leaned into Bianca. I thought my family reunions were messy. Bianca nodded, stunned. This makes my dad's second wedding look civil. Yoko, wide-eyed behind her sunglasses, whispered, this is either horrifying or aspirational. Ajax was still catching up. Wait, so they're literally fighting over historical evidence like it's a garage sale? Xavier's hand went up briefly like he was back in class. This reminds me of my grandmother's will reading, but somehow with more yelling and fewer casseroles. A ripple of similar sentiments rolled through the crowd. Is this what we looked like when we were fighting over Nana's piano? One of the visiting parents murmured to their spouse. God, I hope not, another parent said. We totally did, said a third. A soft whistle escaped someone in the back. We're amateurs compared to this. In the eye of the storm, Tyler leaned closer to Wednesday. What about you? He asked. What would you want to do with your own writings? Wednesday didn't hesitate. I'd put them on public display for a few years, then take them back, then put them on display again. On repeat. He raised a brow. Why? She tilted her head. So people don't forget. But they also don't get comfortable. Then she noticed Principal Weems. Her face was carefully composed, but the signs were there. The slight tremor in her jaw, the hand gripping the hem of her blazer. A look of forced grace masking the deep and creeping realization that her worst fear had just manifested in broad daylight. They were going to take Friday's work. All of it. Wednesday approached, Tyler trailing behind her like a shadow with good intentions. Don't worry, Wednesday said, as reassuringly as someone like her could. I'll let you finish showing off the exhibit. You might even get to hold on to it for 5 to 10 years, if they haven't stopped fighting by then. Weems blinked at her, then slowly exhaled. It wasn't exactly comfort, but in that moment, it was a lifeline. Or at least a delay. Wednesday turned back to the chaos. Her family was still bickering. The guests were still listening, riveted.